Hey guys, good morning. And thanks for joining us. I think people are still coming in as we speak, so let's give it 30 more seconds and then we keep going because we have a lot of content to cover, and I think it's not fair to, for people that are punctual, we have to kind of go. Right. So my name is Paolo Carnen. We're going to introduce you more officially later, and I'm joined with by Nicolas Stricker today from McAfee. You want to say hello?
Hello, Paolo.
And
How are you
everybody
this
else,
morning?
obviously.
How are you this morning?
Right. Okay. Everybody's okay. We already had a half-an-hour chat with Nick. Everybody's. We already kind of. We met actually McAfee a few years ago, so I'm glad to meet him again after all these years. Right. I think we're good to go. So let's get going. Let's start with the usual notes. Some of you might know it already, they probably see it. We are recording this for official use, but because of this, we have to tell you, and to also tell you that if you're not comfortable in session being recorded, you can drop off now. Also, feel free to submit the questions to the Q&A. There's a Q&A box with a question mark. You probably recognize it somewhere in your interface. We will try to review it definitely at the end, but depending on the time, also keep an eye on it and see if it's relevant for the current discussion. Maybe I want to take it out of the box right there. Then. Right, let me introduce you officially. Nick, is it Nick or Nicolas or both?
It's Nick, Nicolas, Nicholas, whatever you want. Nico in France as well.
Okay, so Nicolas Stricker, right? Is one of McAfee advanced technology specialists in EMEA. He's got over 20 years of experience in the cybersecurity industry, and he helps McAfee sales engineers to position and design McAfee threat intelligence and security operations solutions. He's also presenting regularly at the McAfee Enterprise Briefing Center, which actually is in Amsterdam, and I know it quite well.
Yeah, but for the last 18 months, it's been virtual, right? And
exactly, that's true. Hopefully that will change soon. I work for Ingram. I used to be working in McAfee, but also I traveled around. I work with other vendors as well in the security space. I think I say 15 years, but I add a plus. It's probably around 20 years myself at the moment or as well. And I have experience in channel sales and also customer enablement. At the moment, I'm a dedicated SME for McAfee in Ingram Micro. Right, the agenda for today is split in two parts, really, more or less. Mine is probably a little bit longer. I start with introducing the topic about ransomware and what organizations can do to prepare for it, against it, for it. And then I give the ball to Nick to tell you more about how McAfee can help ransomware today. And then there's a kind of a conclusion, a Q&A session. We'll review the questions, whatever is left, and there's a promotion for Ingram Micro partners. I've been given a couple of slides just to wrap it up. Right, let's start with the first part, which is kind of, I like to always use a quote, and I like Sun Tzu. I think this is a quote that I've seen it several times in other occasions as well. But I kind of like it because it kind of fits in today's topic. You have to know both the enemy and yourself in order to win. But let's start with kind of understanding what ransomware is. If the slide move on. So some of these are articles taken from more or less recent times in the news. I'm sure that most of you are familiar with these famous ransomware incidents, the Colonial pipeline, JBS, Kaseya, more recently. There are different dark sides. In one case, there are evil in others. They are kind of down to the same issue. America has woken up in the world after these attacks, understanding that maybe they have to start doing something about it, and ransomware is becoming much more than a nuisance for companies and organizations. And they kind of, I guess they decided that they started to understand that this is kind of a national, it can become a national security issue. Of course, things happen after that. We're going to talk about the Colonial pipeline later on in a different slide. But it was a wake-up call, really, for everybody. I think I ran this question in the poll in the event in LinkedIn, and the answer is not always. These are some examples. Most of the times is about encrypting users' documents, and that's the most common occurrence. But there have been other occurrences like locking the screen, so all the users were locked out of the machine, like WinLocker. Petya was a very famous one for encrypting the master boot record, the disk, the hard drive, and also there are other occasions like Erebus. I was encrypting files for the web server, so to make the web server unavailable, and also devices, mostly Android, like COVID lock was one of the famous ones that was discovered as Zscaler, I think, some time ago. So how does it work? Typically works this way. There is an initial access. So a user usually clicks on a link and downloads something malicious, and he starts gaining a foothold. Then he's trying to spread to maximize the chances of and the payments for ransomware. And then eventually, when he's big enough in the organization, is more he got all the system he could get, he will send a ready status command to the command and control server, and then from then it will start encrypting, and eventually you get the node for the ransom. What does it mean for us? Well, there is a window of opportunity here, right? If we know that it's not about encrypting right away, organizations and companies have a chance between the initial access and the command and control message to say, I'm ready to encrypt, to find out that this is an issue, and maybe do something about it, disrupt the chain, disrupt the communication, block, quarantine the endpoint. And these are all good attempts that organization can use to reduce the extent of the problem, at least. We're going to talk about technology later on, but it's kind of to keep in mind that it's not, there is a window of opportunity. Now, recently, ransomware cyber criminals came up with a better workflow for them, obviously, which introduced the fact that now they also start collecting and exfiltrating to their own servers useful data. By useful means something that you can use to make sure the companies are more willing to pay the ransom. But then again, expanded the window of opportunity, because now it's not all until they dump the useful data that they need. Sometimes it's gigabytes. They will not start encrypting. They want to make sure that they have the data and the way they are. And again, this is a window of opportunity for organizations to do something about it if they find out early enough. Now, the double ransom is becoming normal. I was kind of looking at the announcements and web articles, and I found this one. A Nokia subsidiary got hit by Conti ransomware. I think it was back in June. And they've done an investigation after that, and they found out that they actually were also hit by a data breach. So technically speaking, ransomware is not a data breach, it's a data loss, because it makes data unavailable. But now it's also a data breach because your sensitive data, customer or personal or whatever it is being taken by the cyber criminals. So it becomes both a data loss potentially and a data breach. So this happens a lot, and this kind of brings when we talk about insurance, that's something we have to keep in mind. Investigation is an important part of cleaning up a ransomware incident, to find out what they taken and to do something about it, or at least disclose it wherever is required. One of the most recent evolutions in ransomware is the Ransomware-as-a-Service. Like Conti that we saw in the previous slide was an example. REvil is another example, and there are several others. How does it work? Well, basically, they are looking for people with access to organizations, and of course in the dark forums they share these ransomware software, and they say try it out, see if you like it. Then if you like it, decide, let's discuss price, payment conditions. You've got your customers, and we will send it over to your customers via emails or RDP connections, vulnerabilities, whatever you have in your hand that you can use to access the organization. We collect and do everything for you, and we give you a cut. So this is a very successful business model for them, and this is part of the reason why it has become so widespread, because now you don't actually have to have any knowledge about ransomware or about how to create one, because you can just hack into an organization, then go to these guys and say, I've got access to a potential number of organizations, computers, and whatever. Let's do the business deal. REvil has been responsible in 2021 for 42% of all recent ransomware attacks, according to some statistics. So it's a very successful business model, and it's not the only one, REvil, but it's the one that was very famous. It's very famous at the moment. However, as you might have seen in the news recently, after the Colonial pipeline mishap, which was attributed to REvil or DarkSide, which sometimes is difficult to understand which one is which. But REvil disappeared. REvil disappeared, and in case of Kaseya, it also gave back the encryption key without asking for money. If you remember, he was asking for $40 million US dollars, and then he decided to disappear. But did he really disappear? Now, it's an interesting question, because in this in the cyber, in the darknet, it's very difficult to find very reliable information. But apparently, a couple of weeks ago, Black Matter came publishing their own advertisement in the dark side, in the darknet, and they decided, they kind of advertised themselves to be the new REvil, the new dark side. Now, will it be the same people behind it? Will it be someone else leveraging the code and the experience the others made? I don't know. It's difficult to tell, but definitely it was still a Russian based forum, and it was still kind of similarly, it could have been the same people, but what it means that even if a big player like REvil has to disappear, the space is usually taken by someone else quite quickly. So let's see when the next attack happens, and when Black Matter will be also coming in the news with that. But let's talk about some statistics. This is from the June 2021 threat report from McAfee. As you can see, I'm not going to go into a lot of details, but you see REvil has taken the biggest share of attacks, according to what McAfee found. Yeah, kind of to explain a little bit where REvil comes for people that might want to know. It seemed to have started, first appeared in a web attack on an Italian WinRAR tool in June 2019. And since then, it's been suspected to also be involved with attacking MSPs and other things before it was known for Kaseya. In Europe, in most target countries like Germany and Italy and Spain, interestingly enough. Yeah, so that's REvil, of what it used to be, and maybe now what it's supposed to be, whether it's going to become dark matter. An interesting article I found a couple of weeks ago was that sometimes there's this BEC is business email compromise, which is something that's also becoming more than a nuisance, a big issue with organizations. But you see sometimes a blended threat, BEC and ransomware in this case. So in this particular case, the researcher was posing as one of the employees of the company. And after the attacker apparently he attempted to dupe the victim to use click on BEC emails, but it didn't really work out. So he started to kind of change the tactic and say, okay, well, you know what? If you kind of install for me ransomware on your machine, then I'll give you a cut of the system of the money I make. It's an interesting thing, a bit naive probably, because obviously no employee of mine would attempt that, because you're going to be found out. The tools are there to monitor the systems, and probably they're going to point fingers to you. But if you're interested in reading more about this article, It was a Nigerian scammer, and he was saying, "Well, don't worry about it. I'll take care of the problem, and I'll make sure that it's not going to be traced down to you, and so on and so forth." But it was interesting to see how this sometimes can become another possible avenue for ransomware to get into organizations. This is a kind of ransomware is a big business, right? So it's becoming probably the most successful business model for cybercriminals to make money. Depending who you're talking to, what research you see, I saw also 1 billion as a number for 2020. This is from Crypto Crime Report. It's very difficult to attribute this for several reasons. First of all, because you're looking at cryptocurrency payments, and sometimes they're not so clear what these payments are for. Companies, sometimes they disclose they've been written by ransomware, sometimes they don't disclose, and if they do disclose, they don't tell you if they paid or not. So there are a lot of unknowns, right? But regardless of the real number, it is a big issue for organizations to be aware of. And this is down to a couple of reasons. Now it's very easy to find malware kits. It can be used to create malware samples on demand and bypass signature-based technologies, older endpoint protections, for example. You can find a piece of ransomware that it works fine on GitHub if you wanted to try it out. So it's about will. It's not really about skill anymore. Then there is there are now better ways to do cross-platform ransomware. Using JavaScript and things like that to make it even easier to attack computers that go beyond the user windows. And there's also new techniques as well. Like there's a coming back about encrypting the complete disk instead of selected files. So we'll see where that goes. But let's talk about how do cybercriminals get into organization, because this is relevant for the discussion later on about how we can stop and how we can find out. Well, this goes up and down. As you can see, this is from CoverWave. At the moment, in Q1 2021 is the latest report, RDP is coming back. So because of COVID, a lot of employees work from home. So a lot of users are working from home, and depending on organization, some of them are not really using VPN, they're using RDPs. They are trying to they've been trying to cope with the working from home emergency, and some organizations better than others. So RDP is a protocol that is not that safe, and if you don't control what machines are connecting to RDPs via RDP to your internal servers, internal resources, you might end up that a laptop that might be infected, it might be a personal laptop, and so on and so forth, and you have a big issue at your hand. But that's one of the reasons why RDP is coming back. Email phishing is going down, but it was quite a prevalent attack vector since before the COVID, or just right about that. It's probably likely to come back. So these are the two main ways in, really. The other one is software vulnerability, so which sometimes is compounded by RDP. RDP is also was affected by vulnerability, so the two together are probably kind of coming back. It's interesting to see that email phishing is the direct way in. So if I have a bunch of emails, or I guess a bunch of email addresses for employees, you can find in LinkedIn very easily. I try to send an attachment and see if they click, but RDP and software vulnerability is two ways that customers of this Ransomware-as-a-Service are using to sell their customers to these organizations. They find some RDP connections that are unprotected. They find some vulnerabilities that can be exploited, and then once they have that, they go to the Ransomware-as-a-Service of choice and say, guys, I've got some access to the organization, shall we make a deal? And that's an interesting way of looking at it. However, when you look at the details, this is kind of taken from Microsoft Security blog, you see that there are a lot of commonalities for several reasons. So the ransomware campaigns tend to be variations of the same. If you follow, for example, REvil, you see that They use vulnerabilities a lot to attack, to enter the system, to do the initial access. And one of the famous one was the vulnerability in Pulse VPN, for example. And then from there, they steal credentials, and they do pretty much the similar stuff that other ransomware cyber criminals use. At the end of the day, the payload is really a personal choice. There are a lot of commonalities, which is actually good because, when they cracked an EMEA machine, there were kind of commonalities among the other things that made it possible to make the encryption weaker. And this particular case is similar. If you know that regardless of who you're looking at, they use similar tools and similar techniques to get in, then you know what to look for. And when we talk about what we can do about it, then we can see what we can leverage this knowledge at our advantage. Now, I know in some cases we have SMBs on the call, and because of what happened, especially what happened recently with Kaseya, with Colonial Pipeline, JBS, they say, am I at risk really? I mean, I'm not big. I don't really, I don't think I have the same type of risk of these big companies. Let's debunk some of the myths that most of these organizations say. I am protected. Well, it depends what you mean about protection. These SMBs companies usually also have not have probably the best, the latest protection. So they're probably a weaker target and bigger organizations. And probably even if they cannot extort the same amount of money, the numbers will make you probably the one at risk, because you can be, think about healthcare, for example. Typical targeted organization are healthcare because they're not really technology savvy. They don't really probably have the latest technology. Therefore, they can be seen as an easy target. I can recover, yes and no. Cyber criminals will go to great length to block your options. You might think you have shadow copies or some backup online you can go back to. I think in the investigation part of cyber criminals, they will try to find out if you have backups in one way or another, and also try to encrypt those. So you might not actually have all the options you think you have once you get hit. And because of that, the average recovery time is often measured in weeks, which can be a big hurdle for small organizations. And then, am I a target? Again, to go back to the previous discussion, the size, revenue, business purpose is not what really makes you a target, but your lack of security definitely is. So talking about targets, this is a report from CodeWave again, and you see it's all over the place, all over the map. They, depending on, although this has been changing recently to go after bigger companies, is pretty much everywhere. Healthcare taking a big part of it, as you can see here, but also professional services, and there are, pretty much everybody is a potential target. So let's talk about payments. This is interesting because you don't really see much what happens, when people pay and how much they pay. And I found a couple of interesting reports that I want to share with you today. So according to IOC Square, which was taken for another study, and it's just quite recent, 72% organizations do pay ransom. I think this has changed a lot. It went out from 49%, for example, 2018. Why do customers, organizations pay? Because most of the cyber criminals come back with the decryption key, and it kind of is less painful sometimes. They go through backups and things like that. So this is kind of the reason why it's gonna go up. There are some side effects to this, which we're gonna cover in a second. How much do they pay? Well, it's been gone up until Q3 2020. You see, this is kind of a bit older, but it's the only statistics I found. It seems to have gone down, and one of the reasons probably organizations started to understand you can negotiate with, and it always happens with cyber criminals, and sometimes they ask you for X and you can get Y after some negotiation. So that's probably the reason why the smallest figure in Q2 2020. So more interesting, what happens to those who pay? Did they get what they were looking for? And Sophos did an interesting study is the only one of this kind that I found, and I found out that in 50% of the cases, at least 1/3 of the files could not be decrypted. So sometimes there are buggy codes, buggy decryption routines, whatever is the case. So it's not really that clear cut, you get all the files back. So be aware if you decide to pay, they might still have to kind of restore or re-enter information because not all the files might be decrypted. In some cases, it actually got worse. In 30% of organizations, half of them could not get decrypted. So, and some couldn't decrypt anything. There's always the decryption. It just didn't work. But this is kind of already something interesting to consider. It's not always you pay, you get what you want back. And even if you do get what you want back, it might not work in all the cases. So let's talk about the Colonial pipeline attack very quickly. They paid, and in this particular case, just to go back to what happens when you pay, they actually decided to restore from backups in the end. They did pay, they did get the decryption software, but it was so slow that they figured out that restoring from backups would have been actually quicker than waiting for the decryption software to finish its job. So there's also something to keep in mind. And yeah, and then again, as double ransom always happens, a further investigation found out that also this also led to personal information being stolen because of the double ransom business model that people have today. Now, very quickly, regulation and guidelines. You also something you have to keep in mind if your company or your organization has to subject to regulation of some kind. There are some rules in organization in regulations that might fine organizations who do pay for ransomware. Although to date no fines have been applied, this might change in the future. And then there's all discussion you might have seen, should payment be made illegal? Some people say yes. Insurers, obviously, they don't want to cough up the money anymore, so they are more likely to say yes. And but then there is the other side of the coin, it might not solve the problem. But because of that, there is kind of a vicious cycle going on. You pay the ransom, you get the data recovered, and then more ransomware comes as a result. More people will jump on the bandwagon because it's a business model that works. So you see more ransom paid, and so on and so forth. We have to try to find a way to break this cycle that is becoming part of the issue. Very quickly, I deal with the incident if that happens. First of all, try to contain, isolate your endpoint, and we talk about how it's possible with McAfee later on, or on the network if you can with your network solutions, but try to contain the incident as much as you can and find out what you don't know. This is particularly important for the double ransom issue, but also because in the past, especially for nation-state attacks, which is probably not the case for SMBs, but it still happened, the ransomware was really a way to avoid looking at the real issue. They were trying to do something else. They throw some ransomware in just in case. People were thinking it's a ransomware attack. In reality, there was something bigger going on behind the scenes. So find out what you don't know, and if you're missing the bigger picture. And then find out before you start paying or decided to pay, do your backups work. And avoid, just getting back at them or whatever you want to do, because they still have the key. And before you know that you actually have a plan B, just avoid doing this. It's not all bad news. These recent attacks kind of shook the governments and things like that to look into the issue a bit better. So there are a lot of things are happening, and probably some help that you can actually get if you get attacked by ransomware. And again, the good news sometimes that are even in this particular case give back their encryption keys because they thought it was a bit too big. Now, by the way, in the forums of this Ransomware-as-a-Service, they also say we do not want to attack critical infrastructures or hospitals, some things like that, because they don't want to attract attention. They just want to make their money. Now, let me kind of wrap up with No More Ransom, which recently changed their logos and stuff like that. Does the same thing. Is a product that helps millions of ransomware victims. They have decryption tools. They have a lot of resources that you might want to go to if you're attacked by ransomware. And overall, the project, since it started, saved the organization nearly $1 billion in payments of ransom. So there are 120 tools capable of decrypting. more than 150 strains of ransomware. It might not be yours, but you might not know. Now, very quickly, before I pass the ball to Nick, how do I prepare for this? Let's go through kind of some tips. Well, first of all, you probably recognize the meme and where it's going. User clicks on email, so educating your users always probably should be the first and foremost thing to do, because it can be bypassing technologies that has access to. It's just very easy for the attackers to go and get the user to entice to click on an attachment, and that's the easy way in. However, technology can help, and very quickly we can go through backups, obviously, email and threat protection and web threat protections mechanisms, endpoint security, make sure is up to the challenge, segmenting your network. So if one part of your business is attacked, is compromised, doesn't spread to other parts. Think about that encryption tokenization, especially because this will help you the double ransomware. If they still encrypt the data, so what? Threat intelligence is important to make sure that we can take a look what you don't know and what are you find out what you don't know and how they got in and stuff like that. And then there's probably more to it, but in interest of time, I probably need to skip a little some of them. Now I'm going a bit over time, so I would like to kind of talk about two things, and I'll leave it to Nick. So cyber insurance is becoming more of something that customers are using to offset some of the costs. By some of the costs, it doesn't usually cover the investigation, and we talked about how that's important to find out whether it's only ransomware, what they took, how they got in, if they let something, maybe some backdoors. So it might not pay for that. It's still an important part of the lesson learned. And then the legality of it. You know, insurers are pushing very hard to make this illegal. Whether they succeed or not, we'll see. So read the small prints and make sure that you know what you're doing. Just wrap it up very quickly. The key takeaways from this session is ransomware is good business. At the moment, it's here to stay, very likely. Have a plan will give you an edge that you might actually need when, more than if, you're going to get hit by ransomware. It's not about technology, but it's all about people and processes. Think about backups, communication, and so on and so forth. And with this, I stop and shut up. Hopefully it was a bit rushed, but interesting. And I'll leave it to the part two, which is the last half an hour. Hopefully you can squeeze it in, Nick. And how can you use technology to help against ransomware?
Thank you very much, Paolo. I mean, I've already told you that, but I think you've done a really excellent job with the research that you've done and the results that you've presented, because it might look obvious, but a lot of the information you presented is based on some of the latest news. So I think that you've done a lot of hard work, and that reflects in the quality of this presentation. And I hope that everyone agrees with me.
Thanks, Nicholas. Go on, your turn. I'll stop sharing. Guys, by the way, if you want to submit any questions, use the Q&A. We'll review them at the end. So just go for it.
Okay. Can you confirm that you can see my screen? That's the classic.
Yes, you can. I can. Sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. No, thank you, Paolo. So let's start. So at the beginning of this year, 2021, I looked at the MITRE ATT&CK matrix from a dozen prevalent ransomware profiles in MVISION Insights, which I will introduce later. And I noticed that 3 techniques have been used in all campaigns. And these are data encryption, the use of malicious applications, and also intimate system recovery. And you know, when Paolo was talking about recovery with shadow copy, you have to be aware that in every case, the ransomware will disable system recovery on your Windows system. Now, and of course, data encryption and the use of malicious application is an obvious one. The next 5 techniques, again, we are in the top 10. They are commonly used across all cyber attacks, so it's not specific to ransomware. So file and directories discovery, process injections, command line interface, PowerShell execution through API. Another common technique, which is this time more specific to ransomware, is remote file and copied to the command and control server. And that's because the command and control servers are used to upload some files, but also the encryption keys as part of the ransomware attack. But also because more and more ransomware attacks, they are extracting the data, they are exfiltrating the data to put more pressure on the victims to pay the ransom. And that was something mentioned by Paolo as well. And finally, if you look at entry vector, email phishing, I mean, when I did the research, email phishing was the mostly widely used techniques. I agree that RDP is also very prevalent, as mentioned by Paolo. So the use cases that I want to cover in this webinar are the following. A lot of customers tell us that they have a lack of budget, time, and expertise. So I don't know if a lot of you will agree with that. However, despite that, the customers, they want to increase the level of protection against known and unknown ransomwares. They also want to run a cyber threat intelligence program. And this may sound like completely unrealistic for those businesses, especially small businesses, but I want to show you how it's possible. And also they want to be able to present top threats to their boss and their current security posture. And again, you might think that's something hard to do, but I want to show you how with McAfee, especially with MVISION Insights, that's actually not difficult. And fortunately, we also have customers who have extra resources to increase their protection, detection, and response efficacy against those known threats. So I want to show you what we can do at McAfee to help you if you are in this case. So the agenda for the second part of the webinar is first to explain you how McAfee can help you identify your enemies, their tools, and their techniques in your defense against ransomware. And I will also run a quick live demonstration of MVISION Insights, at least if the demo gods are with me today. I also want to describe the McAfee architecture around ransomware. And to illustrate how we do that with ENS, I will run a recorded demonstration on this one, so there will be a video. And to finish, I want to explain how McAfee XDR and UCE are other technology that can extend your protection, your detection, and your response capabilities. So according to MVISION Insights, the most detected ransomware campaigns by McAfee customers in August 2021, there were, on a worldwide basis, 5 SS5C as number 1, which was first discovered 4 years ago, DarkSide, which was discovered last year, and WannaCry, which was discovered 4 years ago. So you can see that there are still a lot of campaigns that have been detected many years ago that are still ongoing. It's not always about the latest campaign. You can also see some statistics from the UK, Germany, and France, and you can see that REvil is a top one in those 3 countries, among the top 3. Just be aware that Sony.Kibi and REvil are actually considered as the same threat actor. But you might be wondering, how do we get those statistics? So to do that, let me describe to you the backend behind MVISION Insights, and I'll start with Global Threat Intelligence, also known as GTI. So McAfee GTI is the reputation service used by most McAfee solutions. And in 2020, last year, we produced the following metrics. GTI gets threat data for over 1 billion devices, which act as threat sensors, and they're located in over 120 countries. On a daily basis, GTI gets around 24 billion queries, and over 80,000 new threats are identified hourly. When we created these statistics, we counted over 800 million samples in our malware zoo. And to continue, over 100 million of these threat sensors are using machine learning models running on the endpoint, and which connect back to GTI to produce the results. And at McAfee, we have more than 500 researchers that are using those data. So a couple of years ago, McAfee started a project to move the GTI server farm from the McAfee physical data centers to AWS, the Amazon Web Services. And this project got our CTO and our data scientists very excited because they realized that with AWS, they have great data lake analytics capabilities. So they started to try a few science models, data science models, and then they produced the McAfee Threat Intelligence Data Lake, also known internally as Titan. So if you're familiar with Greek mythology, you can understand the metaphor between Titan and the size of this data lake, which is huge. And one of the outcomes of this project is that we can now provide geolocation and also industry sector prevalence statistics against threats. Here, you can see a public page from the McAfee website with real-time statistics on COVID-19 related malicious files. But you might be wondering, how do we know that all those threats are related to COVID-19? And that's done by the McAfee Advanced Threat Research Team, which we call ATR. ATR is primarily working on two fronts. The first one is about uncovering the top threat actors and techniques using McAfee, but also a lot of third-party sources. They have researched and published over 1,000 threat campaigns, including a couple related to COVID-19 threats and more than 400 related to ransomware. In parallel, they also contribute to global law enforcement operations, and they are a trusted subject matter expert for many agencies around the world. Paolo mentioned the No More Ransomware website, which is actually an initiative that was co-funded by McAfee and another vendor and European law enforcement agencies. So you can follow the activities through that website and also through the McAfee blog. So now I want to show you MVISION Insights, and what I'm going to do is switch to the live version. All right, so what you can see here is the default screen of MVISION Insights, and you can see that the ATR team today have published 1,122 campaigns. So that number is just increasing almost on a daily basis. And while Paolo was talking, I did research on our reveal. So this is the search bar here, and you can search anything. You can search hash files, strings, information about our reveal. So you can see that we have information about the campaigns, the threat actors, the tools, the techniques, the threats related to our reveal. And if I just look at the campaigns, this is the campaigns, information about the threat actor itself. You can see the tools which are related to our reveal, and threat as well. One thing that I wanted to do here is just type ransomware. And you can see that when we type the string ransomware and we go to the campaigns, we have currently 412 campaigns and threat profiles which are related to ransomware, documented by the ATR team. So what I will do is pick one of the campaign. In this case, I've pinned DarkSide because that's DarkSide. It was mentioned by Paolo. I was linked to the Colonial pipeline, but as unfortunately they are still on top of the news with some of the recent. They said they were going to go away, but they. As it was mentioned by Paolo, they're coming back through the new threat group called Dark Matter. So what the ATR team is doing is that they're providing a description of each campaign's or threat profile. And after that, from the Titan database, you can see the prevalence statistics from the last 10 days. So this is real time. This is real time in the sense that this is updated every day, and you can see what are the top countries where we have observed indicators of compromise that are linked to this profile. And you can see also which profiles have been detected linked to those profiles. If you scroll down, you can also see if there are some relationship between DarkSide and campaigns. And in fact, there was a recent change in the product to specify how we link that information. And yesterday, when I was looking at it, I noticed that there was a little bug because, in fact, there are more campaigns that are related to DarkSide. So it's been notified to engineering, and hopefully within a couple of days, you will see more campaigns related to DarkSide. So there are way more than 2 here. And I guess that sometimes we make little mistakes, but we fix them. And we have a lot of information from the ATR team that that enables us to make all those links. Further down, you can see the list of MITRE tactics and techniques used by these campaigns, as well as information on the threat actor and the different tools. And if you look at the tools here, there are some of those tools are malicious, but other tools like 7-zip, for example, or PuTTY, they're perfectly legitimate. So that's why we have a mix of malicious indicators of compromise and non-malicious indicators of compromise. If I keep scrolling down, you can see prevalence statistics for your organization. So you can see whether it's been detected in your organizations, in your sector or in your country. And you can change that if you want as well to something else. Just trying to pick another country from Europe. So you can see day by day how many devices per 1 million. So it's not per, rather than being percent, it's per million. How many devices have been detected with IOCs linked to that campaign. You can also see on a global level which McAfee products are detecting those IOCs. So you can see that we have a majority here of endpoint security solutions, but it's also detected by the mail gateway by our IPS as well. Further down, you can see the list of indicators of compromise linked to that campaign or that threat profile. We have file hashes, we have IP addresses, URL, domains, host names, and potentially IP ports. On the left, you can see the malicious indicators of compromise. And on the right, you can see those who are non-malicious or unknown. So this could be, for example, the version of 7-zip that was detected according to DarkSide. So when you're doing some research, you primarily want to use those IOCs, not those ones. And if you want to export them to a threat intelligence platform, you can do that by clicking here. We also have APIs that enables you to have those integrations automatically. And finally, at the bottom, you can see links here to knowledge base articles from McAfee and from third-party solutions like Cyber Reasons, FireEye, Trend Macro. I mean, basically, we don't want to reduce that research journey to McAfee. When we have other vendors, including competitors, that are publishing some good information, we want to leverage that information and provide it to you within MVISION Insights. So you might think that this look very advanced for some of you. I mean, for some of you that might look like it's really cool, but I know that sometimes for customers who are not that used to security operation and threat intelligence, that looks like it's overwhelming. It's a lot of information to process. So what can you do to do simple daily checks with MVISION Insights? And what you can do is start with the security posture score here. When you click on it, that gives you the list of devices running McAfee ENS that have insufficient protections, either because they're out of date or either because some of the features that could be useful to detect certain campaigns, are not enabled. So you can see which device, and you can click here to see exactly which devices we are talking about here, and see if you can fix them within EPO. We also have an integration with MVISION Cloud, but here I haven't configured MVISION Cloud. So in that case, as you can see, my security posture score is 0. So that's not something I can demonstrate right now. On top of that, you can also see devices which have detections which have not been resolved. So that would be exposed devices. You can see devices with insufficient protection. And what you can do is also looking at the list of campaigns that require your attentions, either because you have insufficient coverage or because you have exposed devices. And finally, you can also see here which campaigns have been detected in your environment. And you can see how you compare to other customers in the same sector or in the same country. And if it's not the right country, of course, you can change it here. Okay, so that's something you can check every day easily to see how well you're doing. And you can also take a screenshot and present it to your boss. That's another way you can show how well you're doing to your boss. Now, what I would like to do is switch. So there's a couple of screenshots here that I took in case the demo didn't work. There are also some knowledge base articles here that provide information more. I mean, this is some of the knowledge base articles from McAfee that provide more information about some of the attacks. So in this case, that was Netwalker. There's knowledge base articles have information sometimes like this, where you can see step by step how the campaign is working, what are the different MITRE techniques that are used. So you can find more information externally from MVISION Insights as well. Okay. Now I want to talk about McAfee Endpoint Security, and especially about ENS. So I want to explain to you how the architecture of ENS can help you be protected from ransomware. So on the left here, I've got the client side. Okay, and ENS is made of several modules, but they all use the McAfee agent. On the right, you have the management side with EPO, which provides centralized management either on-premise, so that's what we call McAfee EPO, or we also have a cloud version called MVISION EPO. We'll start with threat prevention, which provide the core anti-malware capabilities. So the first thing that ENS does with threat prevention is whitelisted to ensure that legitimate files and trusted certificates are not scanned for better performance. And then we perform the classic signature anti-malware, which provide the traditional anti-malware capabilities. And that technology typically detects over 65% of the malicious code. So that means there's still 35% to detect with other techniques. So the next one that we use is the reputation lookups to McAfee GTI, which I introduced earlier. So that provides another 20% detection capabilities, especially against brand new threats. So it's really important that you enable GTI. It's enabled by default, and we think it's not a good idea to disable it, as you can see. Next and last technology that we provide within threat prevention, that's exploit prevention and access protections. And they provide additional protections against known exploits and known attack techniques. And you also have the ability to create here your own expert rules. All these modules, they will block the malicious applications and the script before they execute. But what I want to do now is introduce another module called Adaptive Threat Prevention, or Adaptive Threat Protection, sorry, or ATP. So first, ATP gives you the ability to manage your local reputations via TIE, the McAfee Threat Intelligence Exchange, and it's an addition to EPO on the management side to do that. On top of that, we have a technology called malicious behavior detections, which provide protections against non-malicious behavior. And that's typically increasing your detections by another 9%. So that's quite significant. And then we have Real Protect. First, with Real Protect Static, which provides pre-execution machine learning capabilities against known threats. And after that, we're going into post-execution, which means that all the other techniques, they only run once the executable file is run. And first, I want to talk about Real Protect Dynamics, which provide post-execution machine learning. And that's typically increasing your detections by another 4%. So you might say, well, McAfee machine learning is only detecting 4%, and that's not true. McAfee machine learning can detect way more than 4%, but we prefer to rely on more traditional detections and behavior rules like you have here to do the first level of detection, so that we only have to rely on machine learning for the other 4% that are left here. Now we're going to go more specifically on ransomware. And dynamic application containment will isolate the execution of suspicious applications, which is typically what a ransomware will do. And what we have also is the rollback remediations that can reverse changes made by those suspicious applications. So in the case of ransomware, it means that this feature can restore the original files which started to be encrypted. Now, ENS comes with other modules, which I will cover quickly. So we have a firewall that provides an alternative to the native OS firewall. We have ENS Web Control, which will block access to risky websites. And as I've mentioned before, access to website is a key part of the ransomware attacks. So that ensures that also ensures that the suspicious content downloaded by your web browser is scanned against malware, and that will stop some of the initial entry vector that you will have, because typically when you have a phishing email, you're not getting the payload inside the phishing email. You will get it when you click on the links inside the phish email, and that's when your web browser will start downloading those malicious scripts. MCP is an alternative to ENS Web Control for McAfee customers who use the McAfee Web Gateway, and that automatically redirects all the web traffic to the closest McAfee Web Gateway. Now, for environments that are really modified, like industrial or medical devices, McAfee Application and Change Control provides an alternative to ENS because it's using application whitelisting. So it automatically blocks unwanted applications and unwanted changes. Another thing about application and change control is that it supports very old versions of Microsoft Windows, which are not supported by Microsoft anymore as well. And finally, on the client side, you can also use MVISION EDR or McAfee Active Response to run some investigations and to take some remote containment or remediation actions. MVISION EDR also provides additional detection capabilities of techniques from the MITRE attack framework, as well as guided investigations, which are not available in McAfee Active Response. So again, McAfee Active Response and MVISION EDR, they will do the investigation and also the containment, like quarantine the device where you've detected a ransomware. But it's just the detection part that is only done in MVISION EDR because this part is actually done in the cloud. On the management side, we've covered MVISION Insights. So again, MVISION Insights, that's more than 1,000 threat campaigns, and you can see your endpoint exposure to these campaigns. And MVISION Insights also provides some recommendations on how you can better protect against those threat campaigns. And finally, the ATD. ATD will provide a powerful environment that can analyze file samples, which could not be convicted by ENS. So if ENS see a suspicious files, but it can't say for sure whether it's a malware or not, it can submit it to the ATD sandbox, which can analyze the file using multiple techniques, and sandboxing is one of them, but it's not the only one, and provides the results back to ENS. So one thing that I've mentioned is that MVISION Insights can provide recommendations on how to be better protected against a threat campaign. And that's one of the knowledge base articles that we provide. So here you can see that we got a list of ENS rules which are recommended to improve protection, and that's considered a minimum set of rules that you should enable. And in fact, in most cases, those rules will be enabled by default. And you got an aggressive set here at the bottom, which you should only use in a case of crisis, because we know that some of those rules can create false positives, so they should really only be used in case of a major crisis. And if you want just some generic guidelines here, you can see a link to a knowledge base article which provide generic guidelines on how to block entry threat vectors with McAfee solutions, including ENS. All right, I want to now go through the video that shows basically the dynamic application containment and rollback remediation. So this video is also available on YouTube, and the link is in the slide. So what we're going to do here is use the encryption executable from the WannaCry ransomware. And we're doing that on an endpoint which is protected by McAfee ENS 10.7. But what we've done, we've disabled some of the anti-malware features, except DAC and rollback remediations, of course. So for this demonstration, we are going to run the malware manually. And first, you can see that this is an unknown, unsigned applications. And once it's run, this application will install the WannaCry decryptor, and it will create also some files with the WAR extension. Now you can see that the WannaCry decryptor is detected, but encryption has already started. You can see that the pictures are gone. So now we need to wait for the detection of the malicious behavior, which is done post-execution here. So it will take a couple of seconds for ENS will protect to do that detections. And once it is detected, the files are restored by the rollback remediation feature, as you can see. After this, all the processes are stopped and the file and registry entries linked to that WannaCry malicious file are removed. So basically, in this demonstration, you've seen that when an unknown application tries to make some changes, we take a snapshot and all the changes are backed up. And once the malicious file or the malicious activity is detected, the remediation is automatically triggered. So in order to benefit from this feature, you need to use ENS 10.7 with the ATP module enabled. The good news is that all McAfee endpoint security customers, regardless of their license, can use ENS 10.7 with ATP. Many years ago, ATP used to be a different license, but now from 10.7, it's available to all customers. And we really recommend, as you can imagine, that you enable that module. Now, I want to talk briefly about security operations and how MVISION EDR can be used to increase your protections against ransomware. First, you can use the search capabilities of EDR here to look for risky configurations that could be exploited by ransomware, such as RDP. So here you can see how we can identify devices which have RDP enabled using either a real-time query, which is what we have here on the left, or doing historical search, looking for network activity related to RDP. And once you do that, you can create some tickets in your environment to find out whether those devices are correctly protecting against RDP, because RDP can be exploited by malware because you haven't applied the latest patches, or because you have weak username and passwords that could be easily cracked by the attacker. Next, you can use MVISION EDR for threat hunting, especially against the IOCs provided in MVISION Insights. So in MVISION Insights, you have some indicators of compromise, and you can actually there's actually an integration so that you can automatically query the IOCs from MVISION Insights inside MVISION EDR without doing any copy paste. Next, if you are more advanced, you can also search for the MITRE techniques, which are highlighted in some campaigns from MVISION Insights inside MVISION EDR. And here you can see all the alerts related to those MITRE techniques. But you can see that's a lot of alerts, especially based on the fact that here it's only a demo environment. So what we do in the monitoring screen, we group those alerts by incidents so that you don't have to look at 300 threats. But in this case, using the same environment, we've reduced the number of threats to only 3, and only 1 is high priority, as you can see. So that's a much easier way to look at those different MITRE techniques in your environment. All right, so the other thing that you need to be aware of is that EDR is primarily focused on endpoint telemetry. And we have MVISION Cloud, which is primarily focused on cloud and web telemetry. And you have the SIEM here and the IPS, which focus more on network and Active Directory telemetry. So with McAfee XDR, we want to extend the EDR capabilities to integrate not only the endpoint, but also the cloud, network, and Active Directory telemetry, and also DLP, data leakage prevention. So the goal is to give you the ability to have proactive risk management, prioritize guided investigation and response with some level of automation and orchestrations. But at McAfee, we recognize that we don't have all the technologies, and we are opening the XDR platform to McAfee Strategic Innovation Partners via APIs. So you can see here a list of other vendors that are part of the McAfee Strategic Innovation Partnership and have developed integrations via APIs or DXL with our solutions. So you can see the solutions. Maybe you're already using some of those solutions. And I suspect that some of those solutions are distributed by Ingram Micro. At least I hope so. And just to finish, I also want to look at the complete MVISION platform from Microsoft. So with MVISION Cloud, we add cloud and data protections. So first, with our new CNAP, we provide cloud posture management and cloud workload and container security. And with our UCE, Unified Cloud Edge, we combine web protection, CASB, user and entity behavior analytics, UEBA, and data protections. And talking about web protection, I would like to quickly mention a recent addition to McAfee UCE, which is remote browser isolations, also called RBI. Now, since again, web is one of the main vectors used by ransomware for the initial access, for the access to the command and control server, and for exfiltration, now you have the ability to access risky or unknown websites via a remote browser. And this way, all the threats, if there are any, they will remain on the remote browser. And your users will only see a visual stream. So there's just no way that any files or script will move from that isolated browser to your users' PC. And basically, RBI, remote browser isolation, is now integrated into UCE from a technical perspective, but also from a license perspective. It's included in the UCE license. All right, so this is my last slide because I'm going a little bit over time. But really, to conclude, I want to say that despite a lack of extra budget, time, and expertise, you can keep your ENS, your McAfee ENS, up to date with the latest data and ensure that you have continuous GTI access. And by the way, this is GDPR compliant. So there's no reason why you should not enable GTI. And then you should add the advanced ATP protection features at no extra cost with ENS 10.7. And you can run a simple threat intelligence program with MVISION Insights. And it could be that you already have it as part of your license. It's actually included in many licenses. So it could be at no extra cost if it's already included in your license. And if you have extra resources and extra budget, you could consider UCE with remote browser isolations to stop unknown and unknown threats at the perimeter. You could consider using MVISION EDR to increase your detection, investigation, and response efficiency. And also use TIE if you feel that you can manage your local reputation. And ATD, of course, our sandbox toolkit to increase your protection against unknown threats. All right, Paolo. This was the
I was on mute. Right, thanks for question. There are a few. I think they're all for you, not for me. So let's see. There's one that says, how can McAfee help me search whether I have been hit by a ransomware in my CM? Can you take that one?
Sure. So I didn't mention McAfee ESM here because I really wanted to talk about more about the endpoint. But the SIEM, of course, is an area which is managed by the SOC, which can detect the ransomware. One thing you need to be aware is that an EDR solution is really good at detecting file hashes, but the SIEM is not. So if you have IOCs related to a file hash, you will not find a lot of hits in your SIEM typically because the SIEM has more information about the network. On the other hand, in MVISION Insights, we also provide indicators of compromise linked to the IP addresses or the domains. So what you can do is take the IP addresses and the domains you see in MVISION Insights and start searching them in your SIEM. So that can be done manually, or if you have some kind of orchestration tool, you could do that automatically. And we have some partners in the list that are provided earlier that have done that integration.
Okay, hopefully that answered the question. There is another one. I think you already answered. It said, in terms of endpoint security, which McAfee version do you recommend? Maybe you want to spend some time to tell the customer that are still in virus scan. That probably is a good time to migrate to ENS. And
well, my understanding is that VSC virus scan is going to be enough support very soon. So
end of the year, yeah.
At the end of the year. So we know that initially many years ago, some customers were suspicious about ENS because that was a new technology, but now it's not new, it's been established. And really nowadays, more than 50% of our customers use the latest version, the 10.7, because that's really the best. Not only has all the latest features, but it has really good quality. We get really good feedback from the customers. And as I've mentioned, this is the only versions where we provide ATP without checking the license. Every customer, as soon as they're an endpoint security customer, they can enable ATP on top of threat protection on ENS 10.7. So the answer is
ENS, the latest.
ENS 10.7, absolutely. And if you have VSC, you should be really worried. This is really the time to plan your changes.
I see another question. Is it possible to use MVISION Insights with an EDR fully on-prem without using the cloud? I guess some customers are still a bit edgy about the cloud.
Yeah, I mean, this is something we see a lot in Europe. And this is something we have to explain to our product management in the US because they don't have that request as often as we do in Europe. But yes, a lot of customers, they are worried especially about cloud management. So products like MVISION EDR that require the cloud management, they're not completely comfortable with that. But the truth is that if you look at the competitive solutions, all solutions nowadays, they're using cloud management. So, but we still have a solution with at McAfee, because if you let me just go back to am I still sharing my slides or?
Yeah, sure, go ahead. Yeah.
But anyway, if you go back to the list of solutions we have here.
Yeah, can you share the slide? Yeah, perfect.
No, I want to share here. So
yeah.
If you are adverse to the cloud, or at least if your industry or for any reasons you have to, McAfee EPO is still on premise here. So all the management of ENS is purely done on premise, and McAfee Active Response here also provides the investigations and the response capabilities on premise. So the combination of McAfee Active Response and McAfee EPO enables you to work on the cloud. And it doesn't mean you can't use MVISION Insights. You can still use MVISION Insights to research information about the campaigns, and you can always use the IOCs and use either a copy paste or an integration with one of our technology partner. I'm listing them here again, but a lot of those technology partners, they have integrations which are purely on premise as well. So,
very good. Let's give a chance for someone else to ask questions. I think that was basically what we had so far. While we're waiting, some people in LinkedIn were chatting on me because of the event. I have 2 channels and I have to look at both of them. And I noticed they were asking to publish a bit more links about where to go. And I actually, in the interest of time, I jumped ahead. So maybe it's a good idea to spend 1 minute to go through what's available if your organization gets hit by ransomware. We already talked about nomoreransom.org, which is the most established for probably really 5 years, 6 years, Nick, a long time now. Yeah. But there are others coming, and some of them are quite recent. And there is a CISA had a site that's called Stop Ransomware, and the links are here. I'm going to share the slides later, but you can just go there directly if you want to check it out. And also, there is another Institute of Security and Technology, IST, that created a ransomware task force. Now, in there, you find tools, but also frameworks that you can use to strengthen your security posture, checklists, and a lot of other resources. So this is a good good probably place to go, vendor agnostic, to find out more what your organization should be doing to become stronger before it's too late. And if you are hit by ransomware, there is this organization here. Let me see if the slides come up. National Council of ISACs. So what it is, ISACs are divided into verticals, and it's kind of a safe space for an organization is in a particular vertical to share their experience and learn from each other, because that's an important part in ransomware. No more ransom wouldn't be able to be what it is if security vendors and the industry as a whole came together to put the tools and the talents at the disposal to create these tools. But so if you check them out, that's what I'm saying, and I'm gonna put it in the slides as an important point. There are resources out there that you can always look. Now, Nick, do you have any other? Is there any other questions coming up in the chat, in the QA? In the meantime,
no, I don't see.
We have 14 minutes to go, and I've got a couple of slides only for our partners. So if there are any partners from Ingram Micro, I've been told that I have to share this. It's called McAfee Bridge Year Promotion, and that's what it is. So it's an interest-free financing program for our partners, and it's applicable for new existing customers of yours. There's some requirements listed here: 3 years contract with a value at least of 25K annual contract value. And the reason is obvious. They want to ensure that you can capitalize on McAfee, and it's also a displacement opportunity. And these are kind of in a nutshell the values. I'm going to go very quickly. I'm going to put it in the slides if you're interested to see. And more important, if you want to find out more, it's only applicable for participating countries, and these are the countries. These are the people in Ingram Micro you can connect to. Now, for the people that are still on the call, and I think it's very important to understand what works and what doesn't, and how you can make it better, what you like. So there's just a QR code there. Snap it with your mobile phone. You have no excuses to spend 1 minute to answer what you like, what you didn't like, and get any comments and feedback on that. It really takes a second to do it. And with that, unless there are other questions, we are 10 minutes ahead of time. So let's see if pause a second, because I know there is a 30-second delays by the time I say there is any questions. Let's wait for questions. But other than that, I'll keep this slide up to make sure you guys can snap it and fill in the survey. But other than that, I think we covered most of the things we wanted to cover. Of course, it's probably much more you could have added, but in the interest of time, we can also stop here. So any last word, Nick?
Well, thank you very much, Paolo, for starting this initiative and for inviting me. That was a pleasure working with you.
Likewise. Thanks everybody else for attending. We will post the link to the video recording to the LinkedIn event. It's probably the easiest place. And I will send the slides for the people who are registered, at least mine. Nicholas, do you want to share yours as well? You can send it to me, and I'll forward both of them. Okay, so you're also going to get the slides for the people registered for the webinar. Thanks very much, guys. It was a pleasure. And until next time, I guess. I have nothing else to say.